Good evening. Good evening. Is that on? Should be. Is it working? Yeah. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for the primaries for District 4, the Board of Supervisors. And I'm just delighted to see so many of you have braved the wind and the rain. I was expecting maybe 10 people, but this is terrific. My name is Lynn DeLapp, and I'm the coordinator of the candidate forums for the Davis Area League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters, as most of you know, is a national nonpartisan volunteer organization founded over 100 years ago, 1920, to educate and empower voters to exercise their rights in a democracy. The League encourages informed and active participation in government and works to increase voter understanding of public policy issues. The Davis chapter of the League was first established in 1957, and today, with over 100 members, is active in numerous activities, including nonpartisan candidate forums, such as tonight's, voter registration and voter services, healthcare policy, and education about the city's general plan. If you are not already a member, I hope you will consider joining us. You can sign up at the registration table. We wish to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land, and we are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. Tonight, in partnership with Davis Media Access, which is broadcasting this live streaming for the first time for one of our forums tonight, we are hosting a discussion of Yolo County issues with the candidates for Yolo County Board of Supervisors, District 4, Sheila Allen, Mvondo, and Antonio de Loera-Brust. The winner of this race will represent District 4, one of two districts primarily within the city of Davis. As you may know, the Board of Supervisors is the governing board for Yolo County and is responsible for a huge range of county-level policies and programs, including law and justice, health, mental health, social services, land use, transportation, water resources, air quality and flood management, agriculture, economic development, emergency services, intergovernmental relations, libraries, and areas of general governance. It's a huge responsibility. So I'd like now to introduce our moderator, Michelle Famula, who will walk us through tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you all for being here. Good evening. My name is Michelle Famula, and I'll serve as the moderator for this evening's candidate forum. Tonight, we're joined by three candidates for the elected position of Yolo County Board of Supervisors, District 4, Sheila Allen, Mvondo, and Antonio de Loera-Brust. Before we begin, I'll review the forum format, a candidate and audience ground rules, and the process for the audience question and answer session at the end of the show. Here's the format. This evening, we will begin with a 2-minute opening statement from each of our candidates. A coin flip before the forum has determined that Mvondo will go first, followed by Antonio de Loera-Brust, and then Sheila Allen. The forum will then move to 5 moderated questions prepared by our league committee, followed by a 30-minute period of audience questions, after which each candidate will give their closing 2-minute statement. Audience members in attendance, excuse me, I made a mistake on that. That's a closing statement of 90 seconds. I'm sorry, not 2 minutes. Apologize. Following the moderated questions, the audience will be given the opportunity to ask questions. Audience members in attendance have received question cards, which our league volunteers will collect at approximately 7:30. Members may submit their questions during the forum as well. Following audience questions and responses at approximately 8:15, each candidate will have their 90 seconds for their closing statement, starting with the candidate who gave the last opening statement. Here are the forum ground rules. To our audience, members of the audience are asked throughout the forum to refrain from applauding or in any other way demonstrating support or non-support for any candidate until the end of the forum. At the end of the forum, we will ask for applause for all of our candidates. We deeply appreciate your attendance this evening, and we want all to feel welcome and all viewpoints to be respected. Attendees causing disruption might be asked to leave. To our candidates, following opening statements, we will ask our 5 moderated questions. These are prepared by the Committee of Davis League of Women Voters Voter Service Committee. 3 of the questions were sent out to all candidates for their review prior to our forum, and these will be our first 3 questions. Question 1 will go first to the candidate who gave the second opening statement, and question 2 will be answered first by the candidate who gave the third opening statement. The candidates will then continue to alternate as the first responder for each subsequent question. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for their primary response. And to keep us all on track, our timekeeper, Nikki Neff, will hold up a yellow card when 15 seconds remain and a red card when time has expired. Okay, a yellow card that says stop in red when time is expired. When all 3 candidates have responded to the primary question, each will have an opportunity to offer a single 30-second follow-up response. I will ask if any candidate wants to add a follow-up comment or respond to any statement. Candidates should raise their hand, and I will call on the first one I see to request a follow-up opportunity, taking the next candidate to request until all have had an equal opportunity to follow up. Once again, the timekeeper will show a yellow card at 15 seconds and the red word stop at the time limit. Each candidate will only be permitted 1 follow-up response for each of the moderated questions. No candidate requests to follow up. When no candidate requests to follow up, I will move on to the next question. Have you got all this? When we have concluded all 5 moderated questions and follow-up responses, we'll move on to the audience Q&A. For our audience Q&A, all in our audience have been asked to fill out question cards if they have questions for the candidates. Submitted questions must apply to both candidates and relate to the office of County Supervisor. Audience members should send their question cards to the center aisles where they will be collected throughout the forum up until 7:30. And I will ask at 7:30 for any that haven't been submitted to be sent forward. Cards will be screened and prioritized by our league volunteers to avoid duplication and ensure a range of topics and issues. Our forum team will eliminate any inappropriate, rude, or personal attack questions. I'll pose the audience questions to all candidates, asking as many of your questions as time allows, and candidate responses will be limited to 1 minute, with a follow-up response limited to 30 seconds. Again, our timekeeper will show the yellow card and the red stop. I will follow the same process as for the moderated questions, and again, candidates are limited to 1 follow-up response per audience question. The first audience question will go to the candidate who gave the third opening statement. Audience questions will conclude at 8:15 to allow sufficient time for each candidate to provide their 90-second closing statement. Let's begin with our candidate opening statements. And again, by coin flip, we will start with NJ.
Before I start, may I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
Would you remind me, for the moderated questions, do we have 1 minute or 90 seconds?
Say that one more time. For the opening statement?
No, for the moderated question, do we have 90 seconds?
Moderated questions. Let me make sure I read it correctly.
Right.
90 seconds
90
for the
seconds,
moderated
okay.
question response. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'm ready to go if you all are ready for me.
Yes.
Great. So good evening, everyone. I'm deeply honored to be with you and in conversation with you and my fellow opponents. My name is Nathalie N.J. Mvondo, like New Jersey. I like to joke by saying I'm not from New Jersey. The accent might give it away. I am running for county supervisor to represent District 4 because I am offering to be a bridge between you and the Board of Supervisors. Part of my training as a community organizer is to be a community-driven planner. So part of my goal is to ensure that the Board of Supervisors is able to put forth decisions that are as community-driven as possible. I am active on the Yolo County Climate Action Commission. This is a huge topic for me because it's a matter of public health. So ensuring that we reach the goal of being carbon negative by 2030 is a decision and priority that affects all aspects of county government. And in addition to that, also, as you know, the county has many services. One of the questions that we encounter is that people don't know what the county is doing for them. So again, we need you, as you're hearing all of us tonight, please remember that you're part of the solution. And what I'm asking you to consider is, to ask yourself how you can come and collaborate with us. So any elected officials that is elected cannot do the work without your input. So again, my name is NJ. I am running for county supervisor to serve you. To promote, good public health and public safety, better public transportation, and so on. And I'm ready for your questions when you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. And our second opening statement is Antonio.
Hello, my name is Antonio de Loera, and I'm running for Yolo County Supervisor in District 4 to build a Yolo County that works for working people. It would be the honor of my life to represent my hometown on the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. Davis is where my Mexican immigrant family found our American dream, and I've always tried to earn back the opportunities that this town has given me through public service. From the migrant farmworker camps of rural Yolo County to the halls of Congress, I've always tried to be where I can do the most good for my people, my hometown, and my country. Right now, I believe that's the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. When I look around my hometown, I see our people struggling. I see seniors who can't afford to retire. I see young people who are priced out of home ownership in their hometown, and I see so many who can't make rent at the end of the month. Yolo County needs to do better. The core function of county government is social services, but wait times are going up, and too many people are falling through the cracks. I know we can do better because I've done this work. During the pandemic, I led Latino outreach for Yolo County. We got 83% of our farm workers here in Yolo County vaccinated. That's the highest percentage of any county in California. Some in county government at that time said that we couldn't do it, but I fought for it, and I fought for it, and we got it done. So I know how to get things done in local government and get help to where it needs to go. If elected, my focus is to make sure that every family in Yolo County has food on the table, a roof over their heads, and a doctor when they need one. That's how we stop Davis from becoming a town of haves and have-nots. This is how we restore this town as a place of opportunity for the next generation. And I firmly believe that there is nothing wrong with Yolo County that cannot be solved by what's right in Yolo County. Our people, our values, and our belief in the power of community to make life better for each of us. I believe it's time for a new generation of leadership that will build a county government that works for all of us. And lastly, if anyone has any questions for me, my number is 530-219-2801. Ask anybody, I'll always pick up a call with a 530 number. I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And our third opening statement will come from Sheila.
Hi, everyone. So glad that you made it out on this night. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity. It is nice to be back up here on the dais. This is familiar territory for me. For those of you who might remember that I used to be on the school board. I served there for 2 terms. So you're going to be hearing a little bit about my background. Many of you already know me, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that I come to this as a community servant. I did not suddenly think that this might be a good idea, but I've been working for 30 years for the people of Yolo County. I'm originally from rural Wisconsin. You might hear it in my lovely accent sometimes. And I come up from a farming community, from a low-income family. And I was a first-generation college graduate. It wasn't something that anyone did from my hometown. And from University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, that's my license plate, that you'll see it outside. I decided that I wanted to do research, and so came to California to get my PhD, another thing unheard of from this small town. There I met a lovely neuroscientist who was one of the first people who got a job at the Center for Neuroscience here in Davis. And so I was very happy to join the community of Davis. I had 3 children as planned right away, and also right away as planned jumped into community service because that is what I do. I was on the Health Council to begin with, and then I was on the First 5 Commission for children 0 to 5. I then worked at the Public Health Department, so I have actually worked at the county and on the inside. And while I was working at the county was when I was elected, so I've been an elected official. I know what it's like to make very difficult decisions during difficult times. When I was on the school board, this room was much more full than that, and we had the fire marshal here. So after being on the school board, I moved to the Yolo Healthy Aging Alliance, so I've literally worked in Yolo County, serving and understanding the needs of everybody from birth to 100 plus. And I look forward to working with all of you soon.
Thank you.
Could I ask somebody, Joanne, could you come and move the map to the back there so it doesn't block the candidates?
There you go. All righty. Thank you. We're going to now move to our 5 moderated questions, and as I said in the beginning, we'll begin our first one with our second opening statement speaker. So this first question will begin with Antonio. Question number 1, how can Yolo County meet the goals of the county's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan?
So let me start by saying I'm fully committed to our climate action goals. Just to put in perspective, 2030, that's the year I'll turn 35. 2035, I'll be 40. So this is very real for me. I've got a lot of skin in this game. It's my generation who's going to inherit the decisions that we make in the next 10 years. Brass tacks, we need to massively increase the percentage of our energy that's coming from renewable sources. The good news is that we're halfway there with Valley Clean Energy, but I'm profoundly concerned that the percentage of Valley Clean Energy's product that's coming from renewables is not significantly higher than just PG&E. And on top of that, PG&E still has a monopoly on the transmission and distribution lines. So we see the price of that every time they turn the power off during storms, even as their rates go up. I know people are paying more, and people on CalFresh, they can't afford to have the food in their fridge go bad every time PG&E turns the power off. So I want to invest in climate resilience, taking advantage of federal laws like the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act to build a truly locally controlled, publicly owned, 100% renewable power grid for Yolo County. And that's what it's going to take if we're serious about net zero, and that's going to take leadership that's able to seize the window of opportunity created by the federal government, which I believe I can do given my significant federal experience, and more importantly, that's going to take leadership that's willing to stand up to PG&E and really fight for the resilient energy grid and renewable power that we need in our community.
Thank you. I'll move on now for that question to Sheila.
As it turns out, we don't quite have a cap yet. We don't have a climate action adaptation plan because we are working on making sure it's a great one. I saw some of you at the Davis Oddfellows. We had some great conversations there. What we do have in place are some early action plans, and I highly support them. There are some great there are some great ideas with the having solar panels on the county buildings and electrifying our own. Don't I get a 90-second?
I think you might be still measuring my time. I apologize.
Yeah. I was like, that was the fastest 90 seconds of my life. I was like, wow. time warp here. That's fine. So the early action plans is what I was talking about.
Yes.
So at this week, the Board of Supervisors at their strategic planning committee, strategic planning meeting, talked about these very things. So they're talking about getting the solar panels on the buildings, on things that we can do. We can get it done right away now. They're also talking about electrifying our fleet. These are things that we can do right away. And I would like to just to correct one thing, is that we are not trying to be we're trying to be negative, carbon negative by 2030. And for those of you who looked at the clock recently or the calendar, that is very soon. So it's going to take some strong actions right away. So what it's going to take are the kind of things that I can bring. It's going to take money. I don't necessarily have money myself, but I know that the county just hired some grant writers. The county's general fund is very small, only 15%. So we don't have much what I would call fund money. So we need to go out there and get some grants, and we have a grant writer that's just starting now so that we can bring in those private and those federal funds that are available right away. So I very much look forward to making sure that we get the climate action plan in place, and I'm committed to make sure that we get it done, because I am also very concerned about right now and also the future.
Thank you. So again, how can Yolo County meet the goals of the county's climate action and adaptation plan? NJ.
Thank you. So I need to start by saying that we have one of the most ambitious goals in the country. So being carbon negative by 2030, and we are being very realistic about that. It is possible if everyone is on board. I started my opening statement inviting you to ask yourself how you can be part of the solution. We can reach that goal if everyone contributes to that. So that means when it comes to the Board of Supervisors, having a framework that looks like with every decision that is taken, we're asking ourselves the question, how does that impact the environment, and having a decision that then is informed by the answer that we're getting. We need businesses to be on board. You know, the businesses the county is contracting with, you know, the agricultural sector as well. Technical assistance is needed for that because there are rebates and discounts out there. But again, people do need help in navigating all of those forms and having access to what they're already eligible for. The IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, funds part of, you know, many of the caps for the county and all over the state as well. So as you heard, we have a grant writer, but making sure that the county is not losing on any funding opportunity is going to be essential. Residents are centered to that. So anytime you have renovation to do on your home and so on, you know that right now we're pushing and encouraging people to electrify their houses. If you have a gas stove, we're encouraging you to switch to an electric one. This is not out of ideology. It has to do with air quality as an example, and again, it's a matter of public health. So even when it comes to that, we need people to get on board. So again, this is one of the ways we will reach that goal. And basically, it calls for collaboration across sectors and from everyone. Thank you.
So you each now have an opportunity for a 30-second follow-up if you would choose to do so. Would any of you choose to have a follow-up comment to that question? Okay, Sheila, I think I saw your hand first.
Sure. Well, I would just like to follow up on the importance of partnerships, and the way to build partnerships is to know the people and to know the connections. I have had the opportunity, because of my 30 years of service, to get to know and actually to have been to be endorsed by local people, because we need the local connections at the county, at the state, and at federal. So it's going to take all of us working together to be able to do those, to make those collaborations.
Antonio, did you have another follow-up?
Well, I would agree with the importance of going after federal funding. I think that's an area that we really need to do better in. But what we all need to be committed to is 100% renewable energy generation. I mean, individual action like refurbishing your home, that's important, that's part of it. But this is a collective action problem, and if we're not talking about our energy grid and how we're actually generating the power in all of our homes, then we're missing the ball game here.
Did you want to follow up?
Yes, please. Yes. So I want to address microgrids, especially, and how central they are, and they are part of the solution. And what I mean by that is, as you know, California has decided that by, I think it's 2035, we're going to start phasing out of fossil fuel-operated cars and switch to electric cars, right? So it's one thing to push for building electrification and electrification of fleets when it comes to county operations, school operations, but it's not really going to do us any good if we don't have strong microgrids. If you end up being 5 days without power when we're dealing with storms and floods. So making sure that we're building enough microgrid hubs is going to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2 goes first to Sheila. What are your views on water supply, water apportionment, and flood control, taking into consideration city, rural, and agricultural water needs?
Water is life, and water is very important. Sadly now, because of climate change, we do not have our usual water cycle here in California, what much of our agriculture and our infrastructure was built around. I wanted to give you an example of what I think is a beautiful, balanced approach that we already have in Yolo County that I'm hoping that we can build on. The Yolo bypass, which is the causeway, when you drive over that, is a great example of how we can address all of these issues together. So right now it's raining, and you might see an inland sea coming up in the next few days. That is flood control. It doesn't really help us so much, but it helps Sacramento a lot and West Sacramento. That water needs to drain out into the Delta by March 15th in order for the farmers to be able to plant their high quality and bringing tax funds into Yolo County rice. Also in between there, this is in District 4, by the way. We are the proud owners, well, not owners, but we are proudly have all the birds that come through there. The Pacific Flyway is another example of how water is so important. The District 4 office that I'm very proud to be the deputy to, and Supervisor Provenza is here, thanks for being here, Jim, has that as our area and our focus. So we work with the Department of Water Resources to make sure that that water is here in Yolo County and that it does all the things that we need for the people in Yolo County and the birds.
And the second respondent, NJ?
So the latest report that I'm aware of that the county of the Board of Supervisors received regarding our water supplies was that after the drought, the severe drought that we had to deal with, the water levels were up to normal again. I could not be happy when I heard that, because the reality is that here, in the upcoming years, we're still going to have to deal with drought issues and heat waves and so on. So again, the part of what we need really to be centering in terms of actions moving forward, I want to say water recycling, making sure you're not wasting it. So water recycling as it applies to businesses, as it applies to the way buildings are operating, as well, being able, always bringing the community into that. What does that mean for the residents? Gray water, what education do we have on that? What access do we have to those resources? The habitat conservation is not something that we are focused on out of ideology and to be in good terms with the Yolo Basin Foundation. It is because it's part of flood mitigation. We need to make sure that the soil has all it needs, that the ecosystem is the way it should be. And that is one of the reasons why it is also central to work with Yochadihi, our local nation, tribe. So we're learning from all of the ways they've been caring for the ecosystem. It's part of the solution. And in addition to that, I encourage us and people in position of authority to look into ways to do water capture and retention. Do we have way to retain or to capture rainwater and so on? The reason I stress on that is because especially our farmers, local farmers, rely on well waters to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonio, what are your views on water supply, water apportionment, and flood control, taking into consideration city, rural, and agricultural water needs?
Well, floods might be the theme of tonight. So 3 points I want to make. One, we need to protect our rural communities from flooding. I've seen firsthand the damage that flooding has caused in predominantly rural Latino communities, not unsimilar from some of ours in Planada and Merced County, Pajaro and Monterey County. We need to make sure that doesn't happen in Yolo County. Two, we do need to recharge our groundwater, so when it rains and floods like it is tonight, let's get that water back into the ground. There's some really exciting technology that will help us do that. Let's make those investments. I do support the moratorium on new wells, but that's not a forever solution, and a lot of the issue with our groundwater supplies right now is being driven by out-of-area, even out-of-state big farming operations that are planting very water-intensive crops like nuts at an unsustainable pace. And this is costing our local farmers, this is costing our environment. And I understand the nuances here. This is a reaction in part to higher labor costs. Working for the United Farm Workers, I understand how this is all being driven, the shift from less water-intensive crops like tomatoes to more water-intensive crops but less labor-intensive crops like almonds. So we need to get a handle on the nuts. We've gone nuts with the nuts, and we need the county to step up here. Last point, as county supervisor, I'm committed to ensuring that every community in Yolo County has clean drinking water. Madison, where I ran the after-school program for many years, they ran out of clean drinking water for a period earlier last year. That's unacceptable. That's personal to me. Every family in Yolo County needs clean drinking water coming out of the tap.
Thank you. Once again, you all have an opportunity for a 30-second follow-up. Is there anyone who would like to provide a follow-up statement? Okay. Sheila.
A chance to say, there's two things that I wanted to follow up about flood control. Very much a problem in the rural areas. We do not currently have a countywide flood control entity, and so that would be a way that if they were just to clean out the sloughs, that would be a way to address that. And the other thing is that the county does negotiations when areas are added to a city, so like the developments that are coming forward. That's a time to be talking about proper drainage, and that's a problem from a previous one, and we've learned that lesson.
Yes, Antonio?
Just to add slightly to the land use and the water use around agriculture, I also think another thing I'd like to see Yolo County do is just be more transparent around land ownership. We've seen in places like Arizona, for example, where we've actually had Saudi companies come in and use an incredible amount of water planting cotton in the desert. So I do think that the public should be able to know who are the big water users in our area. I think that will bring a level of transparency and accountability to county government that would help our local farmers and our local community just know what's going on and where is our water going.
Would you like?
Yes, just want to add a few words on the well permits issue and stress again the importance of first protecting existing users when it comes to that, and we are very concerned when it comes to the small farms. So allowing the digging of a new well, making sure that everyone is going to have an equitable access to water moving forward. So I think that that's going to be paramount. Thank you. I get distracted by the signs, but I try to.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Before I move on to the third moderated question, I want to take this opportunity to remind the audience that if you have a question on your cards, if you could pass those forward to the folks who are collecting cards now, that would help quite a lot in order to be able to aggregate these for the audience questions. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move on to our third question, and this one will begin with NJ. And this is Interstate Highway 80 passes through Davis and West Sacramento. How should county supervisors address the impact of the proposed widening of I-80?
So for me, this question links to the first question, which was, what should the county do when it comes to making sure we reach the goals of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan? So this is an issue where, once again, I think it is important to recognize why we're even talking about the widening of I-80. It has to do with the fact that traffic has increased, but it also points to public transit usage. So it is not that the public transit authorities don't want us to use buses more and the train more and so on. They are saying that the public, even though they're offering those services, the public is not using them enough. So I think this is a problem that we need to solve. Part of the problem, again, for me, I-80 widening is a public transit issue. Part of the problem is that we need to make sure that we have enough services offering that is matching people's hours. People don't just work from 9 to 5. We need to acknowledge that the single drivers are, part of the bulk of the people who are on I-80. So how do we convince them? What incentive do we have to get them to use public transportation as opposed to being alone in a car and creating more traffic? And last, this is what I'm going to say is not going to be popular. We are looking at adding, a toll, having people pay to use that. The reality is that as we're phasing out of using traditional cars and using more and more electric vehicles, we do need to keep collecting money in some ways in order to maintain the roads. So I have to stop now, but you get the gist. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonio?
Thank you. I share the concerns of many in our community who feel that, Caltrans walked all over us on this. I see Alan in the audience. But the core issue here is that we have far too much traffic in our area. Waze tells people get off the freeway, and people cut through town, and it's not safe. And ultimately, the question for all this traffic is, do we want it to be on our streets, or do we want it to be on the freeway? I believe that it should be on the freeway. And county government, I believe, could do more in this area. For example, we've had the Mace mess for a very long time. I was just recently late to one of my own campaign events because it took me an hour to get from Wild Horse to South Davis on the Mace curve. One question I have is, why don't we put stoplights and stop signs further out on the county roads to try to deter some of this traffic that gets off the 80 because Waze says, hey, you can save 30 seconds going down people's street. Let's add that time, let's deter traffic, or if there is going to be congestion, let's have it be further out in the county road so that you can still get to Nugget, you can still go pick your kid up from Harper. We've had a lot of constituents asking for this, and this is something that I'm really focused on delivering. Last point, we do need to address the root cause of the issue here, and that's the lack of public transit. I'm not a fan of highway expansion indefinitely. I think in this case, it seems like the decision's been pretty much made, but I think to NJ's point, we can use that revenue to invest in public transit. My fiance takes Yolo-Brust to work in Sacramento every day, and that bus does not run often enough. A lot of service has been cut to South Davis in particular, and this can address the root cause of people getting into their cars in the first place if we can get them on a good, reliable bus system instead.
Thank you. Sheila, Interstate Highway 80 passes through Davis and West Sacramento. How should county supervisors address the impact of the proposed widening of I-80?
Well, similar to the other candidates, I think that it speaks to the need for public transportation. I served on the Yolo, the Unitrans, the City of Davis's Unitrans Advisory Committee, and you may not know it, but the Unitrans Advisory Committee has some of the highest ridership per capita of any place in the nation. And why is that? Because it is convenient, it's going to where the people want to go, and it's affordable. And of course, it's affordable. They think it's free, but they've paid for it through their student fees. But those are the keys, is to make sure that public transit goes to where you want to go, and that it's affordable, and that it's convenient. So I am happy that SACOG recently, that's the Sacramento Area Government Organization, created a tolling agency. I don't like tolls for just to be able to drive in a lane, because I don't think that that's very equitable, but I am in favor of finding a way to get some money. You may see a theme for me here is that you can have big ideas, but if you don't have any money, you're not going to be able to do the big ideas. So with this tolling agency, now we can bring some funds in and be able to fund some of the expansion of the public transit. The other thing is housing, and this is a question about where is housing built and where are the jobs. So if you have a job in the same town, hopefully in Davis, because that's where I represent, then you could ride your bike right like we love to, or you could walk. We don't do housing in Davis, but we do have great collaborative relationships with the government that we share with the city. So I look forward to having discussions about that.
30-second response from anyone? Yes, NJ.
For once. So there is something that I want to point out, because I was a bit disturbed by what I think is starting to be a bit of a pattern, and it is when it seems to me that local governments are being strong-armed into making a certain decision that might also not be popular with residents. And I'm pointing out to the money on the table and to, the speech being along the lines of, there is this much money right now, if you don't do X, Y, Z, the money is gone. And I think this is very unfair. It might be true, but we are still reeling from 2020, all the years of COVID and all the extreme weather events and so on. So many problems we're trying to solve. And I just want to encourage all the stakeholders having that type of, words for local governments to just try to think more in terms of solutions. Tell us what is possible. Don't tell us that if we don't, do what you're asking us, without giving us more time, to reflect on it and find a better solution, then we're going to be poor, and this is going to be the end. Thank you.
Any other follow-up? Yes, Antonio?
I think it's important to just on the traffic point real quick, it's very important to get the traffic issue addressed in a meaningful way, and I think that is also a step to something Sheila mentioned, which is our housing politics in Davis. We all know that a major reason that housing projects fail in our community is that people have concerns about traffic. So if we cannot, as a local government, as a county government, be responsive to those concerns and actually earn people's trust back, I'm worried that we're going to continue to just have this logjam on our housing politics, which is hurting so many people in our community. So I did just want to emphasize that point.
Yes, and Sheila?
I think I failed to say in the beginning that I'm currently the deputy to Supervisor Provenza, so for the last 2 years, so it's been the best orientation for this position. And thank you for your idea about having traffic lights out on Tremont, because we already have an agreement with the city of Davis that they will do a pilot. It's going to be at Tremont and at Montgomery to see what that does to the Waze app, because that's really what is pulling people off of the highway. So good idea, we're doing it already.
Many folks have been asking for it. It's not my
It's
idea.
happening.
Our fourth moderated question goes first to Antonio. What are the highest needs and priorities of constituents of District 4?
For me, I think the issue I always come back to is just making it to the end of the month. It's breathing room for families. It's the cost of living in Davis. Rent, groceries, gas, commute times. This is what people care about. A lot of folks, I bet you most of District 4 is not watching this debate right now because they're focused on all those things. How do I make my life work, basically? What I think county government needs to do is make sure that people know that when the chips are down, the county government's going to have their back. We're going to guarantee those basic necessities of life: roof over your head, food on the table, a doctor when you need one. If we can get everyone in Yolo County to know that those things they can count on, then they're going to just be so much free to really not just do well and manage to afford to stay in Davis, but actually thrive, pursue their own ambitions, whether that's opening a business, whether that's going back to school, whether that's just spending more time with your kids. We can have such better life when we're not worried about this constant pressure of just how am I going to afford to put food on the table? How am I going to make rent at the end of the month? And this is where county government is so essential. Medi-Cal, CalFresh, all these programs that working people rely on, we need to do better. And I know I keep coming back to this point, but so many folks fall through the cracks. For over 10 years, I've been helping families that have been dropped from the rolls of Medi-Cal who can't figure out how to get onto CalFresh, mostly in the Spanish-speaking community, but this is not limited to the immigrant population. I spoke today to a 50-year-old woman who's renting a house in Slide Hill Park. I knocked on the door, and she ended up talking to me for hours about the difficulty, how she can't make ends meet as a county IHHS recipient. And that's something we need to do too, is raise wages for our caretakers who take care of the seniors and the disabled. And so when I look out there, I think this is the biggest urgent crisis, is just, will this be a town that works for everyone, or is this going to be a community for an affluent few at the expense of everyone else?
Thank you. Sheila, same question?
Yes, well, this is, sometimes some of the questions aren't related to what the county does, but this is clearly something that the county can be very helpful with. The primary role of the county is health and human services. Almost 50% of the budget are those programs and services that are safety net for our most vulnerable in the community. So this is how people get connected to, the question is the highest needs, those things. Health insurance through Medi-Cal. Food insecurity is a major issue through CalFresh, getting a job through CalWorks. We are where you can come to get the help. And it's not just some temporary help so that then, or a lifetime of help. It's that this is a way to lift up the most vulnerable in our community. My office is next door at 600 A Street. We have a service center there. Most people don't even know that. It was the last one in Yolo County because there is the false idea that there's no poor people in Davis. False. There are many poor people in Davis, and it's harder for them to get programs and services. When I was on school board, they took the Head Start away the week before I arrived because there weren't any poor people in Davis. Well, guess what? By the next year, it was back here. So what the county can do is to provide those safety net programs to make sure that we can all live our best life and be supported. For the work that I've done for both young children and older adults, adults is caregiving. For the little ones, I want to look at what is and is there enough affordable child care, and affordable elder care is a huge and growing issue.
Thank you. And NJ, what are the highest needs and priorities of constituents of District 4?
So I want to start by acknowledging the fact that District 4 does not have a homogeneous population. And so I'm thinking, as I'm answering this question, of three specific groups. I'm thinking of the students, I'm thinking of the homeowners, and I'm thinking of the business owners. So the cost of living is number one. It's been getting more and more expensive to live in Davis as much as we love our town. Rent has gone up for those who are renting. And at the same time, we're hearing of some places that have empty spaces. So there is a bit of a dichotomy going on here. I know several homeowners who are thinking of selling their home and leaving Davis because of, again, they can't afford to stay. And they're also very worried about some of the directions that we might be taking regarding how we do life here, regarding housing projects. That's one of the things. And again, being a business owner myself, I share the concerns of, fellow business owners. You know that many in District 4 have had to close doors. You remember Common Ground, for example, that has to close. We lost also Office Max and so on. And so those are part of the issues that we need to address, right? And other thing, and I'm going back again to the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. I'm going to talk about public safety and again about public health. So you remember what happened last year, and including with our schools, and several of our community members have personally told me that they do not feel safe here right now. And that is also something as a community and at the county level we need to address. Thank you.
Opportunity for a 30-second follow-up. Yes, Antonio?
Yeah, well, I want to follow up on something Sheila mentioned, which is just why don't people know that there is a service center here? And you mentioned earlier relationships, and when I worked for the county during the pandemic, the relationships that I was building were the relationships with the working people of Yolo County, the people who actually rely on county services. These are the folks who still call me. Even when I left working for the county, they would call me when they needed help with county services. And it's not enough to just be in an office all day. We need to do the outreach. We need to actually go out and meet people where they're at. This is how we vaccinated 83% of farm workers in Yolo County. We literally vaccinated people in the fields. That's the kind of leadership I want to bring to the County Board of Supervisors, meeting people where they're at, handing my phone number out the way I did at the beginning of this debate, making sure that people know who their elected representatives are and that they have a way of reaching them and getting the help that they need through Yolo County. That's what county government is for.
Additional follow-up? Yes, Sheila?
One thing that only the county does, and people also don't know about it, but I do help people to know and get connected to services, is public health. When I worked at the health department, it was a very vibrant health department, and in the Great Recession, it was cut to a mere shadow of itself. And I used to say, before 2020, God help us if we ever had a pandemic. Guess what? We had a pandemic, but luckily, because we have the YOLO way where we all step forward to help, that we were able to get through it. And I myself helped with older adults for the pandemic, and we got to 97% of people 65 and older got their first 2 vaccines. And a lot of it was because my phone number was in the Davis Enterprise, and the older adults were calling me asking to get their vaccine, and I connected them to that. So public health is a very essential part of it, and I want to make sure that we get that back built up to what it can be, so we're ready for the next pandemic, because there will be another one.
Angie?
Yes. So part of what we touched on tonight has been access to services and how do we make county services more accessible to people. I want to point out to something you're all aware of, which is in the making, and it is the South Davis Library. So again, as a reminder, libraries do more than, giving us access to books. They're actually very central to county operations. They are where people go to learn that they can have free help filing their taxes, to learn how to speak English, to have access to mental health care kits and so on. It is a place where, after school programs are taking place. And so it's just something, again, keeping in mind what I told you in the beginning, how can you all be part of the solution? Keep an eye out for things that the county is doing that you could support and that will, basically help make life in District 4 better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question from the League goes first to Sheila. At the county level, what would you do about homelessness and the need for more affordable housing?
Well, thank you for that question, because when I am knocking on doors, that's what I hear the most about. As I've already mentioned, the county does not do housing. We've made the decision that we are going to have housing within the city limits, so that is a city function. So having access to more affordable housing clearly is a way to have more people housed. So I'll work collaboratively with the city. But specifically for those who are experiencing homelessness, the county has a lot to offer. As I've mentioned, we're the safety net programs, and we also, by law, provide the programs and services for people with severe mental illness. So we have the funding and we have the requirement to do that. We have voluntarily also focused on people with moderate and mild mental health problems. So sometimes that's a part of why you became homeless, and if you aren't already, when you're living homeless, you will have to deal with some mental health issues. Also, we do the substance abuse or substance use treatment. That's another way that we can help. So we have the Crisis Now program, which for those of you who've heard of it and you're like, oh, Crisis Now, that's happening. It's not quite yet. And I was surprised to hear that. But I just talked to Nolan Sullivan, the head of Health and Human Services, yesterday, and there's just one piece of the puzzle that needs to yet be done so that we can help people with connecting them to the services that they need, having some short-term assessment for them to see what they need, and then getting them into either a treatment bed or the housing that they need. So it's soon, Crisis Now.
And Jay, same question.
So I think, excuse me, this is a topic, again, that calls for collaboration between several institutions. So when it comes to what the county can do, I think a strong collaboration with the Sheriff Department and the District Attorney Office is needed, so that, again, when people who are homeless find themselves in trouble or have a mental breakdown, the big question is, how do we treat them when that happens? Is the first reaction being to put them in jail, or are we able to point them to existing programs that they are eligible for? So that will be one. Another thing is, I'm thinking of what's happening in the cities. So Davis has the downtown street team, which is basically a program for the unhoused community where they keep downtown street clean, and they get a salary, and that is a pathway to being housed and then having a full-time employment and being back on their feet. The question I have when it comes to what's happening with the county is, could we maybe engage with our farmers and see if something can happen that is along the same concept in rural areas? This is not an idea that I had. It's because there was someone from Yolo County who tried to create a farm where basically he will teach people from the unhoused community how to work the land, how to grow food, and that will give them a salary, and maybe also, the idea was to have a type of farm co-op here. So again, that is back to better access to services when it comes to the unhoused community, treating them with dignity. Something I think the county could look into is having navigators. So there is a bridge between the caseworkers and the people who are on the street and need access to what they're eligible for. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last moderated question at the county level: what would you do about homelessness and the need for more affordable housing? Antonio.
Yeah, so let me start by saying I believe the county should do housing. And I know this has been a decision that's been made in the past, but we're in a housing crisis, and it's time for some new decisions. On the issue of homelessness, there's really two populations I want to talk about and be distinct here. Of course, there is the population that most of us think about, the visible element, the folks who are encampments. These are the folks who you might see downtown having visible mental health crises. We do need to be firm but humane with these folks and get them the help that they need. I do fully support fully funding the Crisis Now model of a triage center. This is door number 3 that folks who are experiencing mental health crisis can go to. That's not the county jail. That's not the Sutter emergency room, a place with professional help where folks can get the help that they need. But beyond that, the largest population of folks who are unhoused in Yolo County are the folks who are invisible. These are people who almost intentionally are trying to not be noticed. These are folks who are sleeping in their cars. They're UC Davis students. These are the folks who are camping in trailers in their grandparents' driveway. because they can't afford a home. You might meet these folks. They might bag your groceries at Nugget, and you would have no idea that they're homeless. These are the 3 farmworker families bunching up in a one-bedroom apartment. They might not even think of themselves as homeless, but legally they are. And this is a population, they don't have mental health issues, they don't have substance abuse issues. What they need is breathing room in their daily lives so that they can make rent at the end of the month. And again, we're back to county services, we're back to Medi-Cal, we're back to CalFresh, and this is something that Yolo County can do much better, getting the help to where it needs to go.
Thank you. 30-second follow-up from anyone? Yes, Sheila?
Yeah, I wanted to respond about why the county doesn't do housing. It is because we have some of the best farmland in the entire world. And if we want to be able to feed people, we have to preserve our farmland. So that is the policy. There is land within Davis. There is some land adjacent to Davis that is not high quality. There are some other places in the county, but that is the policy that we have. And I support people being able to get access to food, because once you put housing over it, it's gone. You're not going to be able to have housing, or not going to be able to farm it again. And then quickly, the other thing is about preventing homelessness. It is very hard once somebody has been kicked out of apartment, usually because they're just that close to losing not to be able to make rent. And so preventing homelessness is always better than trying to get somebody back in.
Actually, it's one response per, so.
Okay. When it comes to county services and the unhoused community, I want to stress on the importance of, no?
No, I apologize. Please go ahead.
Okay. I want to stress on the importance of service mobility, and it's a transient population. So I think that, again, when it comes to county services, it is important to be able to know where they are and to bring the services to them. They are not always going to be able to come to us. And another thing, I'm an animal lover. They often, have pets with them, and it's also just a matter of their wellness and their well-being. So taking that into account when we're serving them and when we're trying to house them in specific places. The East Beamer Street project is something that comes to mind, but that's related to the City of Woodland. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies.
No
Thank
worries.
you. Please go ahead.
Well, I just want to speak to this farmland v. housing. These always get pitted against each other. I work for the United Farm Workers. I'm so invested in the agricultural economy of this place and making sure that every part of it gets their fair share. And speaking to farm workers, one of the things that's really clear is that the workers who make our agricultural economy possible cannot afford to live in our town, and they can't afford to feed their own families. Almost 50% of farm workers in Yolo County are food insecure. So with all due respect, I think that the way we've been doing things here is not working. County needs to step up, and we can feed our people and build housing for those people so that people don't have to choose between putting food on the table and paying rent at the end of the month, particularly when we're talking about our ag community. I just think we need to center our farm workers, the folks who actually make that agricultural economy possible, and we can build in Yolo County without losing our agricultural economy. We can preserve almost all of our ag land and still let Davis grow just a little bit in ways that we know we need, with affordable housing, mitigating traffic impacts, and holding developers accountable to the promises that they make.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to our audience questions. Audience has submitted questions that have been reviewed by our League Committee, and I will be presenting as many of those as we have time for. We will be breaking at about 8:20 so that we can have an opportunity for your closing statements. Maybe 8:25 will give you a little more time. I will now move on to those audience questions. Candidates' responses will be limited to 1 minute with a 30-second follow-up. And the first question from our audience is, according to the county CAO, Yolo is on a fiscal cliff and cannot afford the current cost of the services it provides. How do you propose to pay for current services going forward? And that first question goes first to Sheila.
Thank you for that. I was at the strategic planning session this week, and we talked about budget and what we can and cannot afford. And there was discussion of the fiscal cliff, but it's not today. It's about 27 years from now. It is in the future, but it's very important to look at it. We, as somebody who was on the school board and dealt with what it was like to make very difficult decisions when you have limited funds. I understand how to do that, and I will be able to address that if that needs to be. I have already mentioned about the importance of the tiny 15% general fund. That is a real problem for Yolo County. So we can't do the kind of things that we want to do. All the rest of the pie, besides the 15%, are things that we have money that we get from the state or federal primarily, and that we have to provide those services. That's what we've been talking about, the safety net services. But we need to be very careful, and I am highly qualified to be able to make those kind of tough fiscal decisions when they need to happen.
Same question, NJ. How do you propose to pay for current services going forward?
Okay, so about three things are coming to mind right now. So number one, I want to point out again to the fact that finally the county has hired grant writers, but to my knowledge, it's only for the sustainability aspect of county operations. I do think that an investment of, about $100,000 in a grant writer that will be able to locate money that the county is eligible for, that will go to specific department, is an investment that will be wise and that will yield benefits. Another thing is being able to identify services where we're losing money and identify why, and then, of course, addressing what the situation is when it comes to that. And then last but not least, I'm a proponent of the county investing first and spending locally first. I know we rely on consultants for some of the services, making sure that we're hiring locally. The reason I stress on that, as much as I like online retailers, Amazon and so on, they don't invest here. They take our money, but they don't invest back here. So making sure we have a tight relationship with local businesses moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Antonio, how do you propose to pay for current services going forward?
Yeah, this is in many ways the most important task of a supervisor, is paying for everything we want to do. When I spoke with the county administrator, Gerardo Pinedo, he put the number or the year for the timeline for the fiscal cliff at around 12 years. So it's not today, but it is coming up. And we need very clearly to generate more revenue for Yolo County. One of three things is going to happen regardless of who you vote for. There's going to be cuts to services, there's going to be a tax increase, or there's going to be economic development. Of those three options, I choose door number three. I want to sustain and improve the level of services, and I don't want to raise taxes. That means we need economic development. I think there's a ton of potential for Yolo County to be generating more revenue. Look at UC Davis. Look at all the great ideas that are coming out of there. Again, we can look at federal government opportunities, the CHIPS and Science Act. There's no reason why Yolo County can't be just a hub of economic development, of technology, of good jobs, good union jobs for people. And at the last thing, if we do have to make tough financial decisions, we need folks in the room who are going to be prioritizing the most vulnerable and the folks who are not always the most politically powerful, but the folks who rely the most on county services. They need to have someone in the room advocating for them.
Thank you. 30-second follow-up, anyone? Yes, Sheila?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify. So good news, the grant writer is for the whole county. So that is, yay. And that there is a much closer fiscal cliff, and that's what we had of all the horrible that was the pandemic. Something we did was get American Rescue Plan, ARP federal funds that have paid for a plethora of services that have been wonderful to not only help us through the pandemic, but there's also some pilot projects and some important work. That money will be going away. So that is something to think about. Is the money that American Rescue Plan funds paying for, are those priorities? And is that something that we need to address? Because a budget is a statement of your values, so the Board of Supervisors does have the authority to make those kind of decisions.
30-second follow-up. NJ?
Yes, I would like to take us back again to the importance of a good, solid climate action and adaptation plan. When it's well drafted and implemented, it is meant to save localities money. It is meant to reduce people's not just energy bills, but also the cost of operation in the county. So again, this is something that I will encourage everyone to support, residents and elected officials alike. Thank you.
Antonio?
I'll just rattle off another couple ideas for economic development. I think we have enormous potential to be the farm-to-fork destination of America, if not North America, if not the world. I think our hospitality industry, you haven't even started to scratch the surface there. We know about our biotech industry, our agricultural industry. We've already got international companies like Bayer based here for the seed technology. UC Davis will continue to be an engine of that. So there's just so much potential here. One of the things I've always wondered is why can't we have academic conferences in Davis, right? So there's all these opportunities that we're missing. And I think that is doing a disservice to us, and we can really seize these opportunities, generate a good climate for investment and for business, and that will turn into revenue to help our most vulnerable.
Thank you. Our second audience question goes first to NJ. What 3 areas can the city and county work together on for the benefit of our community?
So, as a reminder, city and county have what they call a 2x2, right? So where you have a designated supervisor and city elected official meeting to discuss various topics. One of the item is housing. Even though I know it's been said tonight housing is not primarily a county issue, but people living in the county are affected by the housing situation. So making sure there is coordination between UC Davis, that is also home to several housing projects, the city and Yolo County is something that will be important. Again, streamlining of services. There are some services that the city delivers, there are some services that UC Davis delivers, and then there is a time where the county takes over. Mental health is one of them. So when you have, let's say, a student on campus who for some reason is not able to stay there, and there is a gap between when that person finally is not being served by the school any longer, but is eligible for county services, but there is this huge amount of time before, the person is on board and have access to that. When that happens, it has terrible consequences, taking you back to some of the things that happened last year. Yeah.
Thank you. Antonio, what 3 areas can the city and county work together on for the benefit of our community?
I'll say housing, mental health, and public safety. Housing, I already mentioned, I think the county needs to take a more assertive role in the development of these projects that are being proposed on what is currently county land. We should be helping shape these projects. We should be advocating for good projects, and we should be outspoken when there's a bad project. And so I think there's a lot more that the county could be doing with the city to meet the county's housing needs. Yolo County has very clear housing needs that overlap in major ways with the cities. So this is an area where much closer cooperation, I think, is important to breaking the logjam of on our housing politics here in Davis. Mental health, this is just been a huge issue for our community. We see it every day. Again, I think the Crisis Now model is something we need to be pursuing, and that can give the city and its staff more options, more resources that the county can bring to bear to address the quality of life here in Davis. We already have county staff doing embedded with the Davis Police Department. There's a therapist who rides along with the Davis Police. That's a county position that's currently vacant, I believe. So we need to fill that. And that leads me to public safety. We know there's been a series of break-ins, for example, recently in El Macero. And how is the Yolo County Sheriff's Department, which patrols El Macero, working well with the Davis Police Department? That's an area where we need to work very closely together. Thank you.
And Sheila, what 3 areas can the city and county work together on for the benefit of our community?
Yes, I think I already described how homelessness can be, people experiencing homelessness can be worked together with the city and the county. So that's one of mine I've already talked about. Strong negotiations when there's development agreements being proposed. There are currently 5 proposals that have come to the city of Davis, 2 of which are moving forward, 100% of which are in District 4. So the way that it works is that the county goes into negotiations with the city and the developer, and that is our opportunity to really look at things about traffic, about environmental impact, about water, about drainage. So that's how we work together to make sure that when the county gives up that land to them, it's going out of our jurisdiction into theirs, that it works the best for the people that are living there and for both the city and the county. And third, I hope that you have heard about Hate-Free Together. The city and the county and UC Davis are working together to bring together the community to talk about decreasing hate in our community.
Thank you. 30-second follow-up, anyone? We'll move on to the, everyone. Okay, go ahead, Sheila.
I just wanted to clarify that the position is not open for the co-responders. So if you call the police, if you call 911 in Davis, that is part of the program that's already in place, that what they call a co-responder is available. So it's now 7 days a week, and there's somebody available. And so if it is not if it's not a police problem, but it's behavioral health or mental health or substance use, that there's a specialist who's been trained in de-escalation techniques so that they can be there. And when I was chair of Human Relations Commission, that was something that we worked with social services to recommend, and I'm really glad that that is getting started.
Thank you. I think I saw NJ's hand go up at the same time as Sheila's, or almost. So we'll go to her and then to Antonio.
Yeah, so follow-up answer. Public transit, I think, is an area where the county and the city can work more closely. So we have people who live in one locality and then have to go elsewhere for their work. I heard some noise. We have students who, live in Davis on campus but do internships in other places. So again, public transit is essential. They rely on that. They don't have the means to buy your car, pay insurance, and the cost of gas and so on. Another thing also that could be, positive for the economy is working together to develop agrotourism. When you're thinking of what you're going to do during the weekend, including students, you don't have to go to Napa for wine tasting. We have several award-winning wineries here in Davis and other award-winning places people can go to. So that's some of the things that I will develop.
Thank you. Antonio?
I'll just say very briefly about that co-responder position. I think it's a fantastic model. That position was vacant when I did a ride-along with the Davis Police earlier this year, or late last year, I apologize, but it's great to hear that it's been filled. I do think that's a position where we could actually use one or two more of these folks, and I know there's a really high burnout rate in these really intense, frontline mental health jobs riding along with the Davis Police. I do think that, I lost my train of thought there. But on the housing question, I think it's really important that as we look at all the needs of the surrounding communities, we are also looking at the county's overall housing needs. And I just can't emphasize enough the level of housing crisis that we're in, particularly in my generation. I mean, I look at my peers who I went to school with, and everyone who's getting married, everyone who's having kids, everyone who wants to buy a home is leaving Davis. And you want to talk about a fiscal cliff? Let's talk about the demographic cliff that our community is facing. We see it in our schools. We see it in the declining tax base already for existing services. We need this town to have young people in it if we want to pay our bills and if we want to just keep being Davis.
Thank you. We move to our third question that goes first to Antonio. If elected supervisor, or a way to look at this is, how do you see the role of supervisor in addressing the criminal justice system and the school-to-prison pipeline that occurs for some in Yolo County?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. I think this is very personal to me. Obviously, I grew up Mexican-American in a predominantly white town. It's happened to me. I know it's happened to some of my friends that we've been, out there minding our own business in a park, hanging out, and folks have called the cops on us. And the truth is, I've always had really good interactions with the Davis Police. I mentioned I just went on a ride-along with the Davis Police as part of this campaign, and I talked about it with them and said, hey, when I was a kid, I sometimes had some experiences with y'all where I wasn't doing anything wrong, but someone called the cops on me anyway. And, they said, yeah, the truth is sometimes, we have to respond to calls, but it's, we didn't make the call. It was someone else in this community. And so that's always been a tension, I think, where on one hand, I really feel like this is my hometown. And at the same time, I know that many folks for whom this is their hometown don't always feel like they belong. And so I think this goes deeper than law enforcement. I think obviously we do need to hold our police and our sheriff's department and our DA to the highest standards. That's something that the Board of Supervisors needs to do. But this is also a cultural issue, and we need to be willing to have these conversations, and it's longer than the time I've been allotted. So thank you.
Okay. Same question, Sheila. If elected supervisor, what would you do to address the criminal justice system and the school-to-prison pipeline for some in Yolo County?
Well, I think the number one thing is education, is that, as I mentioned, that was the way that I was able to pull myself up from, because I grew up poor, and many of my relatives who are not doing quite as well as I am now. So that, again, is not something that the county does, but we can certainly help to support people in that way. I'd like to point out that juvenile hall, not that long ago when I was on school board, we built a beautiful new juvenile hall, and it was full. Right now there are 2 people in juvenile hall. and it costs $1.5 million a year, is the last thing I heard, for those two people. Geez, we could send them to college for that, don't you think? So I would like to address that to see about what's going on with the juvenile system, and I'm really glad that we no longer are sending kids to juvenile hall. The other thing is about with police and the youth, that I want to be able to have opportunities for our young people to have things to do in the community, and I love having internships. That's another way to bring people in to learn and to give them opportunities so that they have experience.
Thank you. And NJ, the same question. If elected supervisor, what would you do to address the criminal justice system and the school-to-prison pipeline for some people in Yolo County?
So one of the things will be to, it is already happening, but to work closely with the Public Defender Office and to also ensure that the programs that the county already has when it comes to our youth are funded in, as needed, and also that they are accessible to the group, the people that need it the most. This is, I think, an area where we really need, once again, the effort to be community-driven. So I will encourage law enforcement to closely work, especially with cultural groups and cultural leaders, because coordination is needed. Also, if you want to, not have an us versus them narrative, and if you want some level of cross-cultural understanding to be part of how services, or how the law is being affected. So another thing is, when it comes to the restorative justice partnership, this is a program initiative that is open to residents and that's open to students. We're always in need of volunteers. It makes a difference when you have someone who is young as well, and he's reaching to someone else who is young and being able to, lead them in a certain path and show them, again, all the resources that they have access to. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, an opportunity for a 30-second follow-up. Antonio?
Yeah, I think I do want to build on something NJ said. I'm glad she brought it up, which is the Public Defender's Office. And that's obviously funded by Yolo County. And I hope this is something we can all agree on. But a commitment that I'm making is, if elected, I want to make sure that the Public Defender's Office has funding parity with the DA. Just county funding, everyone's free to go get their own grants, and the DA does get a lot of good grants from the state and from the federal government, and that's completely appropriate. But as far as what the county's putting into these departments, I think we should be putting in as much money to make sure people have their rights respected in the criminal justice system as we are into trying to put people away. And that doesn't mean we're soft on crime. That just means that we want to give everyone a fair shot, and we want to make sure that we're addressing any biases that do exist in the system. And I do hope we can all make that commitment.
Thank you. Follow-up, Sheila?
I think I've mentioned a few times now that I'm a public health nurse, and prevention is so much better than trying to fix it afterwards. So I've mentioned about about programs and services that are available for youth in the county. We have a new youth commission. There's somebody who helped to get it started in the audience. Also, restorative justice is a great approach. We called it P-Court. It happened over at 600A right next to us. So rather than having people get involved with the criminal justice system, that they can work on restorative justice. So I support that also.
Thank you. NJ?
Yes. Another area that I will emphasize is just the school system, the importance of working with schools, and also knowledge, again, that when it comes to our youth, being at risk, some of the things that they're dealing with is homelessness. So again, making sure that there is a streamlining of services between the county and the relevant school districts, and that's something that I will be encouraging.
Okay, I'm going to try for one more audience question, knowing that we're coming close to the end here, and the first response will come from Sheila. From the County Supervisor's Office, what do you think can be done to improve mass transit and transportation in Yolo County and encourage people to use it?
Well, thank you we've already talked about this a little bit, so I'm going to add on to this. The Yolo County Transportation District includes representatives from the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors themselves do not make those kind of decisions and don't have a budget for that, but they can absolutely be a part of the discussion, because, as I said, transportation is only effective if it's convenient and it's affordable. So that is how the county can be a part of it. We know where the people who who need to have transportation services live. We know what their time frame is. So if we work together with the Yolo County Transportation District and with SACOG, the Sacramento Area Government, who has funding for these kind of things, that would be a way for us to improve the transit system. Also, we haven't really talked much about alternative transportation, so things like bikes. So the county has got funding for that in order to, outside of the city, to improve the bicycle paths. So I hope that that's something that we remember too, that there's more than just buses and cars.
Okay, NJ, same question. Improving mass transit transportation in Yolo County and how to encourage people to use it.
Yes, so for me, part of the answer also needs to cover medical transportation as a big need in Yolo County. So when it comes to access to medical vans and so on, several people who are either dealing with a disability or have a chronic condition, special needs, need to go outside of Yolo County to their appointments. So making sure that when it comes to public transit, the services in Yolo County have all they need to work properly. Something else, again, we love our bikes. Sheila mentioned alternative modes of transportation. Something that residents are asking massively is better connections between the cities and unincorporated areas in Yolo, and they want to be safe when they're riding their bikes. They want to be able to ride their bikes to West Sacramento, to Woodland, and even from Davis to Sacramento. So I think that is something that I will encourage the county to work on.
Antonio, same question about improvements in mass transit transportation in Yolo County and encouraging people to use it.
Yeah, I think again, I'll restate what I said about Yolo-Bus. Yolo-Bus is a fantastic program. We need to make sure that our buses are running more often and running to more places. I'm very aware that service has been cut to parts of this district. One of my priorities would be to get in there and try to get that service restored because people were counting on it. My fiance is here. I'm going to just shout out that she rides Yolo Bus. I think I mentioned that earlier. But it's every hour, right? So if she misses a bus, then that's it, basically. She's going to be late if she waits for the next one. So now that's another car you got on the causeway going to Sacramento, backed up with everyone else. So if we want to address I think public transit is how we address the root causes of traffic. And having Yolo Bus run its key routes every 15 minutes is how we get to the point where you're not even checking your schedule. You just go down to the bus stop because, worst case scenario, the next one's coming along in 14 minutes. That's how a lot of advanced democracies do it in their urban areas. I think that we can absolutely do that for our core transit corridors here, for folks going to Sacramento for work, which is a big part of the District 4 population. And so I really am excited about that. I'm excited about the Capital Corridor. I think as much as we're part of the regional transit conversation, we should also be really investing in rail. And I'm excited about high-speed rail. I hope it gets to Sacramento someday.
Thank you. I'm going to bring our audience questions to a close here so we have sufficient time for your closing statements. And again, thank our audience for having provided those excellent questions. We'll conclude now with a 90-second closing statement from each of our candidates, and we begin first with Sheila Allen.
Thank you for this opportunity and being here tonight. It was kind of fun to tell you about the programs and services of Yolo County, and we only scratched the surface because there's so much that it does for you. Coming up in the future, we're going to get you a new library in South Davis. I'm very excited about that. We're expanding Yolo Adult Day Health Center for programs and services for our vulnerable older adults. We have, I'm going to be looking at affordable child care and elder care. There's so much that needs to be done, and as I've mentioned before, I have a lot of experience. I love Yolo County and I love Davis. This is where my heart is. This is where I raised my family, and I'm staying here. I don't have plans to run off to someplace else. I've done the work and I'm ready to do it here now. Also, this is not an entry-level position. You may not know this, but the Yolo County budget is $775 million, nearly $1 billion. There are 8,000 employees. It's the second largest employer in all of Yolo County. It is really important to have somebody representing you who has the knowledge. And as I've mentioned, besides all of my 30 years of experience, I've for 2 years been the deputy to the current supervisor. So I know the parts, I know how everything is put together. And what I don't know is something nobody in this room knows, is what's the next thing that's going to happen. None of us know that, but I'm going to be ready for it because I'm prepared and I'm ready on day one.
Thank you. For your 90-second closing statement, NJ Mvondo.
Yes, so again, you all know I live here in District 4. I'm a Davis resident. One of the things that sets me apart is the fact that a lot of the issues that we talked about tonight, I've had to deal with them on a personal level, and I've helped several people in our community also overcome them. So I think there is value in having someone who is going to serve you, but who very deeply understands the issues at hand and already has a sense of what works, what doesn't work, and is experience in working with the community, not just in terms of receiving input, but also collaboration across sectors. So one of the things that I want to encourage us all to look into moving forward is all the ways we can enact prevention. I want to quickly mention that the Yolo County Office of Emergency Services right now has a survey out. They're trying to put in place a prevention management program. They're asking for input from the population. This is important because, as it was said tonight, it is better to get in front of a problem than to react after the fact. It's going to be more costly. So again, my message for all of you tonight was you're part of the solution. As you're thinking of who you're going to elect, think also of the ways you're going to work with that person. So I thank you, and I'm honored to run for county supervisor, to represent every single one of you, and to bring the community in all those spaces.
Thank you. And for your 90-second closing statement, Antonio Loera-Brust.
Almost.
Try.
Thank you. So I made the decision to come home and run for county supervisor when I was at the State Department. I was in Ukraine, I was on the Polish-Ukrainian border, and we were watching these C-17s land on the runway, unload ammunition, headed for the Ukrainians. And I got a call from a 530 number, and I pick it up, and on the other end, there's a woman speaking in Spanish who says, she didn't know who I was. I asked her, tell me who you are, what's going on, and she explains that she's a woman at the Davis migrant camp, and she's having issues getting on CalFresh, and she can't figure out who to call or anything, but she heard that if she called this number, someone would help her. And I said, okay, this is, a very surreal situation, but I said, tell me your name, tell me, send me an email with the facts, and I'll see what I can do. And that was the moment to me where it really struck me that the thing I can offer that's unique is that I'm a bridge between the folks who make decisions and the folks at the margins, the folks who rely on county services. And that's really what I've been for the past 10 years at least. It's all been kind of building up, for me at least, to this, to feeling there are folks in our community who are being left out, who are not being well served, and they need a county supervisor who's going to go to bat for them. Those are the relationships I'm bringing to the job. That's who I'm bringing with me to the Board of Supervisors. And so I hope to earn your vote. I think we can make a big difference for all of our people here.
Thank you. This concludes the League's candidate forum for the office of Yolo County District 4 Supervisor. Please all join me in thanking our candidates who came forward this evening. I'd like to take this moment to extend my personal thanks to my fellow League members who planned and carried out this evening's forum, and I'd like to thank you, our audience, for your attention, your patience, your active engagement, and your wonderful questions this evening. Please fill out the evaluation questionnaires you were provided and drop them in the baskets as you leave. One last announcement is that the Davis League will join the Woodland League of Women Voters next Wednesday evening, February 7th, to host our final March 5th ballot forum when we present Vote with the League No on Proposition 1, a forum highlighting the March ballots Proposition 1. The forum will begin at 6 in the Davis Veterans Memorial Center Club Room, and we hope you will join us. For more information on these events, please feel free to go to our website. Finally, we now welcome you all to meet our candidates and for them to greet our audience members and provide literature outside in our hall. Safe travels home. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Oh, no worries. No worries. No worries. No worries. Yeah. It's good to have a diverse field.